Hi, my name's Jason Boswell, and today we're going to have a look into what's new within File Analysis Suite 3.8, and that's part of the Voltage Data Privacy and Protection products. So, part of the agenda today, we're going to do an introduction to the roadmap, so what's been released inside File Analysis Suite 3.8, and what are the features coming up in the next few releases. We'll go into quite a bit of detail of what's new in the version 3.8, and then finally we'll look at where you can get some further information. So let's dive straight in there. So as you can see, this is a timeline for the File Analysis Suite. Going back a few releases, as you can see, we try and do releases at least 2 a year, and sometimes we try and squeeze in 3 releases a year. The 3.7 release came out in June. And now with the 3.8 release, has now come out of development and it's going through the processes of deployment onto the different platforms. The demonstration system has already been updated. So all the demonstration tenants, you'll see these new features in there. And in December, it will go out onto the production systems and customers will receive notifications of the exact dates of those. So the main features are the Microsoft Purview Protection integration. We've got some optimized discovery modes and external metadata, but there's a whole bunch of other changes in there, and I'll go into that detail. And following on from this release, we have a 3.81 release, which has some customer enhancements and some security patches that are going on in 3.81. So you can see that follows up quite quickly into the next calendar year. And then much of a bigger change will happen towards the first half of 2023. It'll be sometime in kind of late spring, early summer in the Northern Hemisphere. And this is where we'll kind of move away from the branding of the File Analysis Suite, and the product will be called Voltage Fusion. And one of the main reasons there is we're talking about indexing and analyzing and discovering and protecting data with inside files on unstructured sources, but also structured sources. But there's also some other features which will go into this release. More will come on that release closer to that time frame. So let's dive into the detail of 3.8, the one that we've just really going through the release process of. So let's talk about the first option. So the first major feature is the optimized data discovery. So what the customer need about this was that customers wanted to actually have a lower cost option for data discovery and also a lower risk option. So basically, they wanted to hold inside the FAS service no document content or binaries at all, but they still wanted to discover where sensitive data was. So we've added this option now inside the File Analysis Suite. So when you create your repositories now, there's this option here that says, do you want to store the content as text? So that's useful if you wanted to do like further analysis and change your tags and things like that. But if you're confident with your structure and you just wanted to, once you've analyzed the data, assigned all the tags, know where the risk levels are, then not store the content as text, you can turn this option off now. So you'll see this now. So this is an optional thing, so you can turn it on or off. And when you turn this off, we do not store the body content. And so also the content, the body content, the textual content is not displayed. Okay. So this reduces, it means that you reduces the license cost, so you're paying just the metadata storage rather than the full content storage. You still pay the analysis fee, the full content analysis fee, but you don't have to pay the ongoing storage costs for that analysis work. Okay. The next option is the introduction of Microsoft Purview. This was used to be called Azure Information Protection, and also it's called MIP in previous incarnations. But Microsoft have now named it Purview Information Protection. So now you're able to protect data while it's in use, and you can use FAS now to use its analysis to categorize existing against existing purview protection labels against documents. So to do that, you can go into the file protection system and manage the system, and you can put in the details, and you need these tenant ID, application name, application ID, and application secret, and that will be available off your Azure tenant. And then once you've done that, it will automatically synchronize the rules. And you can see the rules displayed here. Then, much like we had with SmartCyber, you would then activate the rules, and then it's available to you on your protection actions. So, yeah, so you can still use our workbook to protect and apply those labels. Currently, this is limited to file systems, but in the next phase, we'll look at introducing and capturing existing labels that are on document during scanning, analyze encrypted content. So if a content's already encrypted, we'll be able to analyze them and be able to apply labels to other sources, including SharePoint type sources. So that's coming along soon. However, it'll be limited to file systems in this release. Note we've also, as we introduce this protection part, we've removed the option for SmartCyber integration. Next option is about external metadata enrichment. So the customer requires us here to capture additional data from generally termed images, and they could be scanned images or outputs from external systems. And we want to bring from other files from other sources, so other metadata and other information from other sources, and we do that through files in this version. And you can see I've got a IDX file here with an image and another IDX file with an image. So with each image, which could be an image of a picture, it could be an image of a document, it doesn't really matter. And actually, it doesn't need to be an image, it could be any file with some external metadata. So you can see they've both got the same file name, but one of them's got an IDX extension on it. And you can hear, so the text is displayed here. So this is what was in the text file. And much like we do with OCR, we give you the ability to, as you're scanning, and this is the dialog here that you display when you're in the repository configuration. You specify what's the extension and what's the external metadata file processor. So this is the one that we provide out of the box, and it's like a scripting language. And this is a script that will take the data that's in the text file and add it to the content. And once it's added to the meta content, you can see and it's labeled as metadata text content, you can then use that for any type of analysis. So you can use any of the grammars or any of the tags to look for information within here. Okay. So you'll see we provided an example for taking information from a file from an external source, so an additional text file here. But further on, you'll be able to use this scripting language perhaps to get this information, perhaps not from a file, but from other sources that are associated with the existing file. So here we capture an additional metadata that then we can use for further analysis. Okay, next we've done some changes to grammars, and we've introduced this common concept of grammar sets, and at the same time updated the terminology. So what we were trying to do here is have a consistent set of grammar rules and apply them with less effort. So customers knew about, and you can see we've named the grammar sets based on different regulations around the globe, and these are the ones that we provided out of the box. But as you can see, with the new grammar set option, you can create your own grammar sets as well. So you can create your own grammar sets with your own package of grammars that are associated with each of these regulations. So this means that when you're creating your repositories, you can either use a pre-built grammar rules and grammar sets that are built for particular regulations, or you can create your own. So this makes it much easier to associate a consistent view of your analysis inside your repository setups. We've also changed some of the terminology. So as we've done this, you notice we've changed grammars to grammar classes now. Grammar categories are now called grammar types. Entities are referred to as grammar rules. And enrichment, now we term that as extract grammar values. So we tried to make this terminology a lot more self-explanatory, but at the same time, we're using a consistent set of terminology that's used with our structured data. And this, as I showed you in the roadmap, as we bring structured and unstructured analysis together, this same set of terminology allows us to apply the same rules across both products. Okay. We've had some more analysis enhancements with inside the product. We've improved the processing speed when sometimes we found some documents that had a very large number of grammar values, and that slowed the processing down. So we're very keen to keep the processing speed as high as possible. So there's been some improvements to deal with when there's a large number of grammar values created. But we've also, as well as speed improvements in analysis, we've also looked at where we weren't perhaps capturing the correct information. And one of the areas was with inside tables. Now, tables in the previous version, inside this example set of tables here, so we've got this table and this is in a spreadsheet. We had names and it would capture the names and it would capture the credit card numbers, but it wouldn't capture the date of birth because the date of birth is a contextual based identification. So to know that this is a date of birth, we need to see the date of birth as a word to being contextually close to these dates to know that these are date of births. So now the logic has been, the analysis has been added to recognize that this is a table, to recognize that the header of the table is a date of birth, and therefore all of these dates in this column are date of births rather than just general dates. And you can see that in the example. So this spreadsheet was analyzed in this 3.8 system, and I put highlights in to show you that these have been recognized as date of births. So this is a kind of enhanced analysis that we keep doing, and there'll be more work as we go forward to increase the kind of intelligence of the analysis to recognize, particularly on these contextual-based analysis tools. There's been some enhancements to search. So we've added the ability to do searches on the protection system protection rules. So this is useful if you want to say, show me all the documents that are protected or perhaps not protected. And you can also say that protected by what protection rules or what protection systems. So this is particularly useful if you can say, if all documents that have a particular label, so all documents that credit cards should be restrictive. So you could then do a search for the particular grammar and particular label at the same time. This will become particularly useful as we do further enhancements to analyzing existing labels that are on document, and we can really cover that protection use case better. So this will become much more useful in the next releases. We've also added a kind of file type grouping. So if you wanted to search images or documents or things like that, you had to know you have to put all the different extensions, all the different image types in here. So now we've put grouping together now. So now if you just wanted to search for all the images, you can just search for these groups in here. So this is useful now, particularly as you can search for everything that are word processing documents, everything that are images. You'll see this further on as I show you some of the changes to the dashboards. As we've introduced this new option to analyze the content but not store the content, we've had to review our display enhancements. So you'll see there's been some new options added. There's an option icon here to show when a content has been stored. But there, as part of that, we consolidated how something has been analyzed and the appropriate risk or the weighting level that's associated with them in together. So the tick ones are the ones where they've been we've analyzed the content, and this one we've just analyzed the metadata, and the label, obviously the color represents the highest weighting label associated with the document. So you'll see some slight changes to some of the icons in here. So I'll leave you to read those here. We've also tried to capture more information from Content Manager. So now we're capturing the unique identifier from Content Manager, so then you can then see the document with inside Content Manager, and you can then reference this back into CM. There's also been an indicator added to the document view panel for documents where the preview has been truncated because of its size. The processing agent has been updated. Note that on your tenants, you will need to download and install the upgraded agent for 3.8. However, it should be a seamless process. They've been working to streamline the processing agent installation and upgrade. As part of that, one of the biggest elements that made the download quite large was SQL Server. So now this has been replaced with Postgres. So you will be presented with a dialog here to put a username and password in as part of the installation process. It's up to you to choose what password you want to choose in this. And the reason we let you choose a password in there is because as part of the we may contact you at some point as part of a support activity to gather some information from the Postgres database if they're doing some support work on some problems with the agent processing. Then we didn't want to put a kind of hard-coded password in there because that would be a security flaw. And we wanted you to be able to log into the Postgres system if necessary. So that's why there is an option to add your own password, or you have to put your own password in here. So yeah, just put the password in. It's up to you whether you keep it consistent across all your agents and just keep a note of that password. There's also been some updates, shared Google Drives. So these are documents that are shared with inside Google Drives. Now you can optionally analyze the data within inside those Google Drives. This was a request from a customer. We've enhanced the configuration options for Exchange, and these options are in the agent admin. So if you look under the Exchange option for agent admin and the agent, you can choose which folders to exclude and whether you want to process hidden folders. And we've improved the efficiency of processing very large files. And finally, we've added context to some of the processing errors. So some of the customers found it quite hard when they were getting errors back from external systems such as SharePoint. And we've added context to these errors so that then you can diagnose particular problems with your system. Okay, so as you can see in this list here, and more details of this, I'm going to review them briefly, but more details were available in the release notes, which are available as part of the documentation, but I'll quickly go through them. Many of these enhancements come through customer requests, and we'll continue to do as many customer requests as we can through the release cycle. In terms of repositories, when creating a repository, you can now have an option to extract the grammar values as part of the primary capture rules. So as part of when you're doing the ingestion now, you can extract the grammar values. Note, grammar values are required, so extraction of those values are required if you have masking turned on and you want those masking the sensitive data to be masked within inside the content views. So you will need to turn on this option as part of your ingestion process. When editing the repository, you can import the security options as part of a template. Kind of useful if you're doing multiple repositories again and again. We've added an indicator on to say if the grammar sets have been changed since the repository was created. Notice now we've got grammar sets, so we've got like a consistent set of grammars, and we apply to multiple repositories. So what happened if you then go ahead and change a grammar set after you created the repository? There'll be a warning to say, hang on, if you wanted to continue to keep a consistent set, it'll tell you that the grammar set's definition and the repositories are out of sync. It's up to you whether you want to reanalyze this against that existing data. On the repositories list page, we've added a column to show processing errors performed by the repository. So this is quite useful to see if those processing options are displayed. So there's now like a C or an E to tell you whether C is for if it's been collected, E for if it's been enriched data. So all of this information is available to you. You'll see more information actually in the document release notes of all the different kind of codes that are show you for that column of how the processing options display. Updated primary capture options for repositories. There's more options. We're trying to be consistent in terms of the primary capture options across all the repositories. So we're trying to add date, modified date, and file types across as many of the repositories as possible. And so we'll continue to be consistent. So you go back and if you to look at repositories if you want to change those. And when viewing repositories now, you can select the source and create a new repository, and it'll auto to pick the source. In terms of tags, you can now create static tags based on reporting groups and waiting labels. Previously, static tags were just static tags, and you couldn't link them to reporting groups or waiting labels. Now you can do that. And this was just a confusing thing. There was a grammar that was called sensitive data. And basically, it was a catch-all of the other sensitive data that wasn't financial data or government data or contact data. So this was confusing some people. So we basically renamed it to the other sensitive data. In terms of the agent and processing, one of the key aspects in this here is the ability to, previously you could cancel a task that was pending, but once it was processing, you couldn't cancel. So an in-process activity couldn't be cancelled. Now you're given the ability to cancel an in-progress activity. So if you made a mistake, a job's been executed and it's taken a long time to execute and you didn't mean it to do this, you can cancel it. And what this will do, it won't roll back everything that's been ingested, but it'll cancel from that point in time. There's also some indicators to help you manage your clusters. There's a page now to identify if the processing agents are out of date. So there's a little warning icon if they're out of date. We've already used to display the version number of the agents, but now if there's a difference between what's in the system, so let's say you have a 3.7 agent that's operating obviously against the upgraded 3.8 service, FAS service, then it will notify you that it needs to be updated. And there's also indicators if there is a low disk space warning. We've noticed that some of the processing, particularly if you're analyzing zip files, we have to open up those zip files and then analyze those in batches, and that has been improved, but we want to give you a bit more of a warning if during this processing and it does, you need more disk space. Okay. And finally, on this section, this is just a caption change, really. We used to have the update button actually started a new scan process. So, and this was wasn't so self-explanatory. So we've renamed that update button to scan, so you can really see now that you're going to kick off a new scan process. In terms of additional analysis enhancements, there was not too much change in this release, but as previously we talked about the change to file types being grouped, and now it gives, given that we've got a group set of file types, we can now display that in the dashboard here. So clicking on the icon on the right hand side here gives you the ability to display this as grouped or non-grouped categories for the file types. So this is fairly self-explanatory, I think. In terms of managed enhancements, there's a few changes here in terms of the UI. There's a new UI for the workbook document to analyze the options. Given that we now have an option about whether we store content or not store content, that needed to be an option as part of the analyze options. So now there's a new option here to analyze. When you select the options here and then hit the analyze button. We've added a new activity window. So which is the first window here before the timeline. And this activity window shows all the activity that's going on in the workspace. So here there's an activity running. I've added a new data set, so adding a new data source, and as I'm part of the new data source, that's populating it with inside the workspace. Now this was a bit of a hidden activity before, and so customers are trying to work out what's going on. You know, I've added my data source and I can't see that data in the timeline or in the content or anywhere. So now this is displayed in the activity here, so you can see exactly what's going on. I think by default it shows the activity window if there's some activity going. If there's no activity going, by default it goes to the timeline. And finally, on this section, the data sources, data subjects, holds, and exports were all tiles before, so these were kind of tiles displayed here. Now we've put them in terms of tabs, so it's much easier to work these. It also gives us more space inside them to display more information. Okay, so we're coming to the end here. So as with every version, we update the API. The API, if you're not aware, is a really useful part of the product. I'd highly recommend. It's a great way of integrating this with other products or getting information out of the service. So this is available with every customer with the gateway service, and this has been upgraded appropriately. The only one that's major change really is the fact that some of the previous versions, we started with this authentication using login agent user, and that's been replaced with the straight login method, which is much more appropriate for any type of integration activity. So the login method has been in the product for quite some time now, and now we're kind of deprecating the login agent user. And as there's been a change to repositories and templates and grammar types and things like that, there's been some appropriate changes in these roles here. A few notable fixes and any current known issues. So there's a few fixes that we had with unescaped double quotes where customers found them. We resolved an issue where we were consuming a lot of disk space, and that was giving that disk space warning. So we can handle particularly large zip files much better and without increasing the amount of disk space required as much. And when searching by record date, only the top level documents were shown. So this was about the record date with inside subdocuments. One known issue, and this catches a few people out, is when you're upgrading from 3.7 to 3.8, it's important that users with inside the UA must manually clear their browser cache for the first time when they access the upgrade. So you'll notice that sometimes you may get some odd errors in terms of the UI, and those errors are nearly always fixed by going to the browser and clearing out the browser cache, and then once you've cleaned out the browser cache, you'll get the new parts of the interface. So just watch out for that one. So just wrapping up here, where do you get any marketing training and packaging information? So as always, the documentation is available, will be available on this URL, and there'll be some updated marketing material on the main site. I'm encouraging internally people to use the discussion forum, and so this link here is to the File Analysis Suite internal team site, but externally, any questions, concerns, please use the community forum. So I'll put a lot of this information on the community forum, and I'll put the deck on the community forum as well, so you've got the links. And some updated on the sales enablement site, and there's always stuff on the YouTube channel. Excuse me. This pre-sales training, this hasn't been updated. The pre-sales is mostly kind of relevant to this pre-sales training, but always keep an eye on the partner training as well. So here is the File Analysis Suite Academy Foundation work. Some links, of course, there's the collateral is continued to be updated. Here is the website we talked about before and where to get further information down here. So these are all clickable links that will be available to you from the deck. And that's the end of it. So thanks very much. Hope that was useful to you. If you got any questions through the channels that we've just discussed, and get in touch. Hope that's been useful. Thank you very much. Bye for now.